Come to the final session. I've got the daunting task of following on from all those superb speakers that we've heard over 3 days, and it really has been a fantastic set of talks and stimulating and encouraging discussion. Well, now we try and bring it not necessarily all together, but to give you the opportunity of raising any other issues or anything that you want to raise. But just to start, I put on the cover design, which Karen has produced, and of course, it's really showing everything is linked to everything, and that's why that's there. So, in a sense, that's been the theme of what we've been doing. We've heard all sorts of, as I say, very excellent talks on particular issues, but they all link together, and there's this great commonality. So, you know, just this. So this is my bias of words and so on that I've written down over the past 3 days. You know, Peter Ho's new menagerie with the black elephants, Societies at Risk, which is the title of the conference, Thinking the Unthinkable, VUCA. And the workshop was designed to look at risk from a wide variety of perspectives. But what we have seen is this great congruency of the analysis that people have presented. And these are just a set of headings that I've written down. As I say, it's my bias that comes through there. Although I think that obviously the global change stands out as one thing, the complexity of interactions, the world population burden, to me, is a major issue. Cyber threats, when we talked about threats and so on, and of course all the other things that have been raised, resilience, anti-fragility, what was just said now, stewards not owners, and of course education and financial empowerment, especially for women. So these are things that have stuck in my mind as the days have gone on. And of course we do have all sorts of other things that have been shown. Ambiguity, perhaps the biggest ambiguity, was when the new British Prime Minister said Brexit means Brexit, and nobody knows what Brexit means. So, you know, we have that type of thing going on. I was intrigued by Nick Gowing's little picture of the guardsman doing his twirls. And he said, that's a bad day in the office for the general, but really the question should be, why is the guardsman there at all? He's wearing an old uniform, an archaic uniform, carrying a weapon with no ammunition. And actually the security guards are way, you know, 300 meters away from there, and they're doing the real business. So maybe, you know, one has to ask the different questions. And it reminded me of a story I heard about Imperial Russia, that there was a guardsman in the royal palace who was walking up and down a section of grass. And they changed the guard, and this went on. And people said, why is that happening? And nobody knows. Nobody could tell. And finally they found an old lady who'd worked in the palace as a servant many years ago, and she said, the reason was that a young princess was walking on the grass and found some lovely violets. And she didn't want them destroyed. So they placed a guard there, and he marched up and down and destroyed the violets, but they still marched up and down. Then they said, well, maybe we should get rid of the guardsman, it's doing no use at all. And they did, and the violets came back. So that's perhaps a story coming out of looking at guardsmen and so on. Anyway, now it is over to you. This is your time to raise any other issues that you feel bubbling up inside you. So, over to you, your session.
I'll say something, if you want me to say something. I have been really struck by how similar the messages are that come from all of our different perspectives. And that might be, as has just been so eloquently put forward, that we live in a system of interconnected systems where every system that we're worried about is interconnected, so similar drivers occur. But I think from a political perspective, that's really important because it says there is huge commonality about the threats, and we shouldn't be thinking about the risks associated with food or water or energy or finance or disease or whatever. We should put them all into these bundles and look towards ways of building interdisciplinary resilience or intersectoral resilience in a global way. But I think we have to also have a very much stronger voice and break out from the fact that, as again Andrew was saying, I'm an expert on this, he's an expert on that, and he's an expert on that, and he's an expert on that. But actually we're all saying the same thing. So I would very much like there to be a unified message coming out of this, speaking to a global audience, that we're all speaking with one voice.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your remark. I think I'm totally agreeing with him. Where I have a little bit of problem is that actually, or for me it's a challenge, because I don't like the word problem. Because basically, you know, everybody has problems, and we have all problems, and that, whatever, it can go on forever. We have identified our challenges. Many of us have taken a lot of time to exactly define what the challenge is. I think this is the biggest step you can have. Once you know what the challenge is, you can start to think about how you can overcome it. And if you just look back what Andrew said at the end of basically, he defined where we have to go. So we know actually where we have to go, but we don't know how. And instead of leaving the message negative, everything is complex and everything is interlinked and everything is just so complex we cannot do anything, I would like to hear a little bit more positive echo out of this workshop here, basically that we can build paths into the future which take into account of the issues we have been discussing. And in many instances, we have time to do it. We don't have 200 years to go it, but it's not so that we hit of a sudden now in the next 2 days with the head against the wall. And I think we would be much more positive and actually better seen if we come up with possible paths to solutions of the issues we have been discussing. So kind of the negative feeling which many of us had at the end, because the problem has been described as an almost unsolvable problem, we have actually done more than half the work. We have done the analytics. What is it? And now we have to go forward. And I would say if from what we have done here, actually we get a path into the future, then we make an impact. I know it's easy to lament. If you lament, you get money, because you say, you know, it's doom and everything will be flooded, the capital markets will collapse, all the leadership is not good anymore, whatever, we need money to study that. But at the end of the day, this is not helping anybody to get into the future, and we should become a little bit more future-oriented. I think we have now the issues kind of laid out, and some issues are easier to deal, others are more complex, and you have interactions between. But I think it's partially also our task now to do the step forward. Because otherwise we kind of sit here and turn around and say, oh, how horrible the whole thing is. Too many people of this world, we cannot feed them. The economic system is out of control, and so that's it. And then what do we hear? Mostly academics. Then the taxpayer says, why the heck should we put money into your pocket that you tell us how miserable the world is? We know that ourselves. So give us a way out of it.
Yeah. Do you mind if I just jump in, because I'm afraid I've got to go to a plane. I just endorse everything I've just heard here, and I go back to the 2 words I used during my presentation. This is developing a community and a process. And you use the word pessimism. I like to think of it as realism. And it's endorsed by everything I've heard, and I'm sorry I wasn't here for the first 2 days, but that summarizes what now needs to be merged, because there are so many similarities. I'm worried, though, when I go and see a risk officer in a major corporate who says, if I put certain risks on my risk register, I'm blamed for putting them there because they don't want to see them. That's a really difficult psychological problem. That's got to be got over, because as everything I've heard today, and I've contributed to that, has confirmed, this is a very different world. But I think you put up, Andrew, geopolitics. The trouble is, a lot of people in companies don't want to think geopolitics. They think that's for somebody else. They don't want to worry about a Russian use of nuclear weapons or something like that. That's not going to happen, they think, but it could. So community and process, and can I thank you for inviting me and everyone else, I think, because this is an important step in that process. You've probably developed something more than you expected today, Jan. So I'm sorry, I've got to run.
Right. Thank you. Can I just ask Andrew a question? You talked about GDP problems and definitions. Should we go the way of Bhutan?
That we had this unipolar world view of the world, whereas Bhutan shows the nature of diversity. If you think about a garden, even a weed has a purpose, even an insect has a purpose, right? So you should allow that diversity to happen. And just allow these to through, rather than saying, okay, because of efficiency, we must have every plant looking like an oil palm tree. I mean, that's effectively the kind of efficient way of view of the world. But whereas if you take a symbiotic garden nature of the view, then Bhutan has a purpose. Because some people want to live in Bhutan.
Yeah, because they have their what is it, happiness index? Yeah, right.
Can I just, can I
the
just,
activist table over
can
there.
I just
yes.
say something before? First, I want to say that what Sasha said is precisely the purpose of this last session, to take the things we heard and try to chart out the next step to solve them, to address them, to become optimistic, or whatever, to get going. So
we're coming on to that. Yeah.
Yeah. So we don't have that much time. So let's.
Yeah.
So if I can just start with the bad boys table and then move it around.
Yeah.
I think we had a very clear steer of where to go, and I don't know whether it's because Sasha missed some of the talks, but the issue of, I raised the issue of having to think about sustainable consumption patterns for health and environmental purposes. Andrew's talking about stewardship and equity across generations and so on. The Paris Climate Agreement is about intergenerational equity. It's how do we raise that lens? We've gone beyond the fact that the world is falling apart. We all know the world is falling apart. I think we have quite a clear vision of how the world should be in the future. The issue, I think, is how we make that there.
Yeah, I just want to reinforce that. One of the things that impressed me was not only the commonness of the perception of the threat, but also the fact that everybody had an action plan. And I really appreciated that.
Chat show over here. I just want to add on for your list here. I noticed that maintenance is not on that list. And one of the things I want to emphasize, because I'm an archaeologist and I deal with stuff, is we need to bring stuff into focus. In the hard sciences and the biological sciences, they're really good at this. They've got stuff wrapped up. But in the study of human beings, we have not. We tend to think of the study of human beings relating to issues of politics, issues of society, and so on. But the key point about human beings on this planet is that we are a material maker, and we build ourselves into material things which then become the casing for what we do. And we have to maintain that casing, or we have to get out of it. And it seems to me that all our discussions about economics, all our discussions about politics, and that list on the screen there, need to have the real cost of maintenance built into what we're talking about, because that is a fundamental part, as Sasha pointed out, of the business of dealing with the problem. That is a cost we have to work out how to wear. And we have to do that if the concept of being stewards of the future is going to be sensible. We absolutely have to have that in.
Thank you. Peter?
I'm going to go to a theme that I've been talking about for 3 days. I think as university people, these present us with fundamental questions of what we teach, how we teach, the disciplinary boundaries that have kept us bounded in, the failure to encourage liberal arts education at the lowest level of university training. And the problem is that the high end, and this is something that Andrew talked about at the beginning, the high end is that this narrow specialization in education is actually distorting the education system. So, you know, this is another conference, Jan, but what is the university against the backdrop of this? So I think the conversation about the university and the knowledge question is absolutely central.
Well, actually, I was very glad that Peter started the session, and then Andrew ended the session. I thought that there could be actually more, going forward, I thought there could be actually more input from the East. Because, you know, the West, if I can just very quickly summarize, is a lot of goals and principles and theories, very clear concepts. And, you know, the East, if I can just quickly summarize, is very contextual based and lots of processes. And more importantly, it's Chinese culture, if I can just summarize that as the East. It has a lot to do with unity of purpose, and also peace. One of the Confucian saying is, all within the 4 seas are brothers. And and so I think that has will have a lot to contribute actually going forward, because it gives a more balanced view. For example, the title of this conference, Disrupting Balance, maybe if we look at it from the Chinese view, it could be maintaining balance. Now that would give us quite a different perspective, because disrupting balance to me reminds me of like Aristotelian. It's more agonistic, the viewpoint is from the West. Whereas if I look at it from the Chinese angle, maybe maintaining balance. If we remember the Book of Changes, a very ancient book in China, when something goes to the extreme, it will revert back to the original. And many of us use the words like pessimism, somebody used realism. May I therefore say that we also have to think about optimism, because the end of something is usually the beginning of something else. Thank you.
Sheila.
I think it would be useful for the community that came together for this conference to move forward with a shared vision of what could be in the world, and then move toward thinking about methods to ameliorate the problem sets that many of us discussed. And I don't think that's unrealistic. I think that we could have a follow-on conference to this where we talk about, I don't want to use the word solution sets because I think complex problems don't have them, but I do think they can be ameliorated. Things, we can improve the planet for future generations, but we probably can't do it by ourselves. We have to do it collectively as a global community. And part of what I think we could do is articulate what some of that might mean, because it has to be a global perspective that does include East and West, that does understand the mental models of the various cultures on the planet, because that's the only way forward that I can imagine anyway.
Thank you. Anyone else want to contribute? If you haven't spoken in the last 3 days, here's your chance.
Hi. I really enjoyed the past 3 days. I'm coming from, I guess, a sort of scientist perspective, and I'm hearing a lot that, technology and all that seems to be, obviously the way forward, and politics probably is the thing that's holding us behind. I guess in the absence of like an ultimate ruler for the planet, I'm wondering how maybe technocrats can have a greater role in determining the future of the world, and how that shift of sort of power might happen. I guess that seems to me one possibility, and yeah, I'm wondering about that.
Thank you. Last call? No? Okay, well, right, yes.
Everyone else on my table spoke, so I didn't want to feel left out. I mean, I think it was so amazing to be invited here and to speak among absolutely amazing speakers. And I think we heard a lot of things that are very, very troubling and I think very scary. There's an absolutely wonderful book called, I think, Burying the Chains, and it's about the abolition of slavery. And, that was a huge, huge challenge on the scale maybe of what we're facing today. And the arguments for the abolition of slavery was not an economic one. It was an ethical one. And I think there is still very much a role for ethics and morality for us to address these challenges. And I hope that becomes kind of more of our conversation. I think we do live in a global world. I think the young generation, but all the generations do feel more global. I think that's something we need to capitalize. And this idea of taking responsibility for each other, and really of doing what is right, even if that means sacrifice.
Thank you. You raised an interesting point there because, of course, the moral arguments over slavery were very intense, but practically compensating slave owners was the way to drive it through. And then so you had to look at things with a very different viewpoint to get to your practically to get to your end point. And I think that's another message we have to take forward. Mañana, should we put these things off? We can't afford to put them off. But now we have to also bring this back to local. This is Singapore. It's a unique city-state without a geographical hinterland and with very special challenges because of that. And of course, Lee Kuan Yew said, Singapore has to have a global hinterland. And this has been a big driver for the politics of the country since its independence. So, we have to take the Singaporean viewpoint, and we're in Southeast Asia, and look at it from those aspects as well. So, what are the next steps? Well, the immediate step is that all the talks and discussions have been recorded. We need to check things, to check the quality of the recording, all this sort of thing. And we hope that this will be made available online in early January. And that will be online to the world. So anybody will be able to access what has been said. We will send, obviously, as normal with all these events, you send a questionnaire, how well was it organized and how well did we do, etc., etc. But more important, we want your ideas, your input for the topics or subtopics that we need to address if we're going to take this forward to the next stage. And from what we've already heard, we want to develop a white paper to address these issues, especially from the Singaporean and Southeast Asian perspective. And of course, we have to use, for that, we have to use the output from this workshop. Now, we have a natural, very high-level international panel, and that's our speakers. So we hope that you will continue to play in this game with us, and that's very important because you have provided great insights and we want to use your expertise in the future. But, as I've said, the questionnaire will be asking everyone, all the participants, not only the people who are still in the room, but all those who have participated over the last 3 days, about their views on the issues that need to be addressed. And obviously, taking Sheila's point as well, we have to come together again. When will that be? Not quite sure at the moment. We've got a lot of work to do, and clearly this will be after we have put our thoughts together, drawing on what we've heard in the white paper. And then just domestically, NTU has organized this workshop, and we also need to learn and develop our own activities accordingly. So those are the next steps that we propose. Unless there are any comments, are there any comments on that? Any additions? I think that's a very practical way of, we've had a great meeting, but we don't want that to be the end. We have to have a trace, a legacy from these past 3 days. Okay. In that case, it only remains me to thank everyone. In particular, I want to thank Karen and her team, and of course the crew who have been recording and helping us and giving us their technical know-how. I want to thank, of course, the speakers for all the preparatory work that they did in giving us these excellent presentations, the time they've taken to do that, which of course is the hidden time, and the time they've taken to come to Singapore and be with us, and for that we are very grateful as well. So I would like to thank Jan, we started this, how long ago? But almost 18 months ago, thinking about how we should do an all-embracing risk workshop. It started to take one shape, we reshaped it, and it's ended up in the way we've had it, and that's very much due to Jan, and as co-chair of this, I want to thank him very much, and I think we need to give him, show our appreciation. And finally, because we've had very interesting questions and viewpoints coming from the participants as a whole, I want to thank you for coming, for being with us in these 3 days, and for contributing in the way you have. So I think you should show your appreciation of yourselves. Thank you. And with that, we will close the conference. For those people who are going to be traveling a long distance, very safe journey, and for everyone else, have a very good evening. Thank you.